Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to True Crime Groove. I'm your host, Maze. Thank you for listening. With me on the podcast today is the Pineapple Queen. How are you doing today, Pineapple Queen?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Maze?
I'm doing pretty good. I quit smoking about a month ago, so it's rough. I still want to smoke, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I quit a while back, and I know this was a struggle for you. For how many years were you smoking?
For forever, since I was probably 17.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So been a while, but I did it. So no going back now.
Right, exactly.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for listening to the podcast today. I also wanted to thank anyone who was able to listen to our last podcast. As you might notice, if you've listened to it, my microphone was breaking, so it doesn't sound that great. But we did remedy that. I went and got myself a nice, shiny new Blue Yeti microphone so I can sound crystal clear to everyone. So we wanted to mention that and just say thank you for putting up with the sound quality of that last podcast. We really appreciate it. We've been ready to record for a little while now, maybe a week, and you got sick. You sounded like you were gargling gravel in your throat for a couple days, so we thought, no. Then I had to go to the dentist, and I had a bunch of dental work done, and my mouth was all screwed up. And then the thing in Afghanistan happened. And for those of you who may or may not know, the Pineapple Queen's husband is a United States Marine. I just wanted to send my thoughts and prayers to those Marines' families. That was a horrible thing. And so when we were kind of finally ready to record, that happened. And it just didn't feel like it was a good time to send out a podcast, especially in your situation where you have the wives and things of the Marines, although there were husbands too, because there was a couple of the Marines that were killed were women. But we just decided to delay it a little bit. Thank you for your husband's service, but also for the wives and husbands that stay home. They also serve as well, in my opinion. So thank you.
Yeah.
I was looking at our next case, what I wanted our next case to be, and I thought it was the right time because it's actually a case that I've been looking at for quite a while. And when you say the name Scott Peterson, you ask anyone that's, say, 40 years old or older, maybe late 30s or older, and you say, what do you think about Scott Peterson? The first thing they'll tell you is, he's a jerk, he cheated on his wife, he's guilty, I'm glad he got the death penalty. That's the standard answer. That was my answer for a long time. And then I noticed that he got removed from San Quentin's death row. He was taken off of death row. And I read this thing, and it said why jury misconduct, something or other. And so I thought, well, that's weird. But nobody made a real big deal about it. I saw a 2020 thing about it, and it was kind of surface level fluff. There really wasn't a lot there. That they didn't go into it all that much. And so I was like, meh. And then I'm on some true crime, just chat groups and stuff, and people were talking about it a little bit, and someone suggested that I go watch something, and I did, and that kind of changed everything for me. And I really started looking into the case, and I thought, this really needs to be out there more. What were your thoughts initially about this?
I was relatively young when this case was going on, and so I had only heard of the name Scott Peterson. Oh yeah, he killed his wife. But I never really dug into the stories. And so it was kind of interesting diving into this case, trying to decipher what really went on. And I kind of put myself in a position as I'm a juror and he's innocent until you prove me otherwise. And yeah. We will go on this roller coaster ride together. If you haven't heard it, you can take it from my perspective. If you have, come join us for the ride.
Yes, absolutely. That's the key thing is what you think you know about the Scott Peterson case. You really don't. You really do not know. But we're going to tell you. Let's get our groove on and talk some true crime. This is the case of Scott Peterson. So, you know me, I like to just jump into the deep end with both feet. I like to just get to the meat of the case, but I know the Pineapple Queen loves to find out when people met and when they got married and when they fell in love and blah, blah, blah. So why don't you go ahead and tell us all that, PQ?
Alrighty, so we're going to dive into Laci Peterson. She was originally born with the name of Laci Denise Rocha. She was born May 4th, 1975, to her parents Sharon and Dennis Rocha. They owned a dairy farm together, and during this time, Laci was able to find her love for gardening and taking care of like livestock, and she did have one older brother. Later on in life, the parents did end up splitting, and the father remarried and had another daughter. Her name was Amy. She altogether had 3 other siblings, but one older brother named Brent.
He's the only one that's
relevant, yeah.
The other ones were never much involved.
Right, exactly. So the mom, when they split, she moved to Modesto, California, and she would visit her dad on the weekends. Laci was this beautiful brunette. She had like a big smile. She was outgoing. She was 5'1", but was this strong, wasn't afraid of anything type of personality. So she ended up at Polytech State University, where she majored in ornamental horticulture. But basically, people who graduate with this major, they do like event planning, or they might do like nursery type work. So while she was in college, she went to a cafe called Pacifica Cafe, and she met a friend there, and the friend worked with a man named Scott Peterson, and she had mentioned to her friend, oh, he's really cute. Can you give him my phone number? So Scott Peterson, he was born October 24th, 1972. He was an only child to Lee and Jackie Peterson. Lee had already had 3 kids of his own, and Jackie had, including Scott, 4. So in total, he had 6 other siblings, and they were all older than him. He was known as the Golden Boy, and he was very polite. He grew up in San Diego. Growing up, his dad really pushed him into golfing, hunting, fishing, kind of like the father-son type bonding things you would do together, which later on he ended up becoming a pretty avid golfer due to them spending a lot of time doing that together. Because of that, he ended up getting a scholarship to Arizona State, and I don't know exactly what happened. I know there's some rumors that he may or may not have been drinking, partying too much, so he may or may not have gotten kicked out. But he did later on, in I think like a year or so later, he ended up transferring to California Polytech as well. Scott majored in agricultural business, and he was working at that Pacifica Cafe while he was in college. So when he met Laci, he was kind of taken back by her because she was beautiful, and he honestly thought that the phone number was a joke. So when she came in and asked him out, they were excited about getting together. Everybody they knew said that they were like this perfect couple. They were, you know, everybody couldn't say enough about them. Now, on their first date, he did take her deep sea fishing, which is kind of a strange date. It you could see how it could be somewhat romantic. Me personally, would rather go to a movie. And if he were to have asked Laci, she probably would have said the same thing too, because she got really seasick. In 1997, August 9th, the couple did get married. They had a beautiful outdoor ceremony. They had about 150 people. And the couple used their degrees to open a sports bar called The Shack in 1998. Now, they had sold that shack in 2000 to move to Laci's hometown back in Modesto to start their family. They ended up buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow for about $177,000. And it was a pretty upscale neighborhood in Modesto. Scott took a job at TradeCorp, which is like a fertilizer company, and he did a little bit of traveling with that job because he would sell from different farm places around the area and surrounding states. And Laci took a job, but her main focus was being a housewife and all of that good jazz. In about 2002, they got the news that they were expecting. They were going to have a little boy that they were going to name Conner.
So that brings us to Christmas 2002. Laci's pregnant. They're getting ready to have a baby, Conner. Everybody's extremely excited about it, we believe. And it's the morning of December 24th. Laci wakes up. She goes downstairs to make herself something to eat. She has to do this because if she doesn't, she gets nauseous because she's 8 months pregnant. Scott stays in bed for a little while. He eventually gets up and comes downstairs as well. He notices that Laci's eaten. She's watching her favorite show, Martha Stewart, and he's making his coffee or whatever. She's having a cup of coffee, and he asks her, "What are you going to do today? What's your plans?" And she says, "Well, I'm going to mop the kitchen floor. I'm going to take the dog for a walk, and then I'm going to go over to my mom's to start prepping for dinner." I believe she was going to run an errand. She's got to go to the grocery store and get something. She's going to make French toast, I think, on Christmas Day. She's going to pick up some bread. She asks him, what do you got planned for the day? Now, gets a little strange here. He says, "Well, I was going to go golfing, but it's cold and it's rainy, so I'm going to go fishing instead." Okay. It's too cold to golf, but not too cold and rainy to fish. I'm not a fisherman, so I don't know. Do people fish in the rain? Maybe they do. I don't know. I don't know much about fishing, so I don't know. But he says that's what he's going to do. I think she asked him to pick up a fruit basket for his grandpa. I think it's a gift, Christmas gift, I guess. So she asked him to pick up. He's going to do that real quick as well, and that's what he's going to do. So Scott leaves between 9:30 and 10. That's a little vague. I couldn't really find anything that says any clearer of what time he exactly left. And I know in some of these stories, times and people go crazy with times and dates, but in this story, there are a few times and dates that are very important to this case. It's extremely important to know exactly when something happened. But so he leaves between 9:30 and 10. At 10:18, a neighbor sees their dog, Mackenzie, and she's walking outside in the front yard with her leash around her neck, but nobody's around. So this has happened before. Mackenzie's got out before, and she kind of just herds her back into the backyard and locks the gate. So we know for a fact that Scott is at the warehouse at 10 o'clock, a little after 10, because he's on his computer. There's a computer there at the warehouse, and he's on it. He's looking at emails. He's answering some emails. He's looking at some woodworking project that he wants to get done and this and that and the other. So they know he's there searching things on his computer. He then goes and he gets the marina that he's going to put his boat in. He says he fishes for about an hour and then he heads home. He leaves a voicemail on Laci's phone around 2:15. Kind of says he kind of loses track of time a little bit, and because he was supposed to pick up that fruit basket, he calls her and says, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to pick up the fruit basket. So I'm sorry about that. I'm headed home. I love you. I'll see you at your mom's." Drops off the boat around 4:15 at the warehouse. He gets home between 4:30 and 4:45. Well, this is kind of where our story, this is where it starts really, because he comes back and Mackenzie is in the backyard. He sees Mackenzie in the backyard. It's a little weird, but not overly strange or anything. He goes in, his clothes are wet, so he takes them off and he puts them in the washing machine to wash them. He has a piece of pizza. He goes and takes a shower, and he's kind of getting ready to head over to Laci's parents' house, her mom and her stepdad's house, for dinner. He notices Laci's car is still in the driveway, so he's like, "Well, that's a little strange. Let me call her mom and see what's up." So he calls at 5:15 ish. He calls Laci's mom and he says, "Did you come pick Laci up? Because her car's still here, but she's not." And the mom's like, "No, we thought she would be here by now, but she wasn't here yet. We figured you guys were just going to come together." And he's like, "No." So he starts walking around the neighborhood, looking around, and the mom and the stepdad, they're looking for they're looking for her. They're calling people. "Have you seen Laci? Have you seen Laci?" Eventually, they get worried enough that they're like, "No, something's wrong here." And about 5:45, they call the police department, and the police department comes out. They start, and they're like this. They start treating it as something's wrong here. Not because a lot of times people will say, "Hey, my loved one is missing," and the cops will come out and they'll talk to the people and they'll be like, "Okay, well, why don't you call us back in a couple days if they don't show up," because people just disappear sometimes. People just take off most of the time, and it's no big deal. But she was 8 months pregnant. They thought, who's 8-month pregnant lady's not going to go disappearing on purpose.
I think they also thought too that she could have fallen. Maybe she was giving birth and the dog ran back home. Like all these things were going through.
They definitely treated it differently. That she was an 8-month pregnant woman than they may have if she was just a regular person.
Right, exactly.
Just someone missing. So the detective, his name is Detective Brocchini. He starts asking Scott questions, and he's not really digging Scott's responses to these questions. He thinks he's detached, that he's aloof, that he's doesn't sound worried enough. I think at one point he asks him for a glass of water, and Scott gets him the water, but he puts a coaster down under the water glass when he sets it down in front of him. And I'm not sure why. I wouldn't have really thought much about it, but the Brocchini guy's like, "Oh, I didn't like that. That who's worrying about a coaster at this point? Who the hell's worried about a ring on their table?"
Right. Yeah, and I think it's funny because, it would be it's odd for, your wife's missing, but you're worried about getting rings on your table. But there are some OCD people out there, with the washing machine, washing his clothes as soon as he walks in the house. And then, there are little things that kind of seems like he may be a little OCD because of also with the cars he was worried about.
Yeah, I was just about to mention, they go to the Detective Brocchini. He wants to look in their cars, and he starts looking through one of the cars, and they're parked close to, side by side, close together. And he opens up one of the doors, and it's kind of close to the other car. And Scott puts a glove or something in between the door and the other car, so that it doesn't scratch scratched the other car, and he thought that was also a little weird. He's like, why is he's worrying about scratching cars and his wife's missing? So those kinds of things. Me, myself, I'm not sure I would be, that doesn't scream guilt to me, but so they asked Scott to come in to the down to the police station for questioning, and they start questioning him. And this is on film. If you watch the docuseries or other various things that this is on, you can see him being questioned, and he's pretty calm. He's pretty cool. He's pretty nonchalant, almost, I would call it. And the detectives don't like this at all. They felt that he had something to do with this pretty much immediately. They were like, this guy's not acting right. So they ask him the one question. They say, have you guys been having any marital problems? And he says, no, we haven't. And that's going to come back into play here in just a bit. So the next day, the Christmas Day, what happens is, so they let Scott go back home, but it's Christmas. So in the news business, it's extremely slow. There's nothing going on because it's Christmas Day. There's nothing to report, really. Almost nationally, there's nothing to report.
I was going to say, isn't this when the media started to coverage stuff 24 hours a day, too? It was
yes,
like
this
right
was
at the right time for...
Well, not the beginning, but it exploded with this case.
Yeah.
You had a couple of local reporters who heard the case on their scanner or whatever, and they showed up Christmas Day, December 25th. They showed up, and they were outside Scott's house reporting. By December 26th, the following day, there was 10 reporters, and by the end of a few days, everybody was there. NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, Fox, headline news. Basically, if you were a news outlet, you were at Scott Peterson's house because, like I said, there was just not much going on. And then this 8-month pregnant woman, very attractive woman, goes missing, and they can't find her, and it just explodes. And with that comes a lot of opinions on things. With that comes a lot of speculation on things. With that comes a lot of rumors about things. So Laci's missing. Eventually, the media, they want to talk to Scott. They want to ask him some questions. They want to know what's going on. So he starts giving some interviews. And for the most part, the media consensus is they're not really digging his responses. They're not liking his demeanor. He doesn't seem like he's in enough grief or enough anguish or enough whatever for them. And especially with Nancy Grace. I think if you watch Nancy Grace before the Scott Peterson trial and you watch her after, that's where her like crazy, she like lost her mind over this case, like because she thought Scott Peterson was guilty so badly that it almost like broke her brain or something, because she made it her mission in life to get Scott Peterson convicted. She just had almost a personal vendetta against him. So on December 31st, they hold a vigil, like a candlelight vigil for Laci. They're looking for her. They're trying to find her. They're taking in tips. I think they had some tips come in saying that there was a van or a truck outside a neighbor's house across the street, and there were some people that looked like they were committing a burglary, taking things out of the house, and they arrest these two guys, this Steve Todd and Glenn Pierce, and they say, we didn't have nothing to do with that pregnant lady. That's like the first thing they say to the cops when they get arrested for this burglary, and which is a little odd, but they talk to them, and the police go, we think that burglary was committed on the 26th, not the 24th. And they're like, okay, so they just kind of let it go at that point. But that's going to come back here in just a little bit, because that's going to be way more important than just dismissing it out of hand like that. like we said before, this story, it's at this point, it's gone national. It's all over the place. It's on the news 24/7. And we come to find out that, well, we don't find it out right then, but during this whole time that Laci's missing, Scott Peterson is having an affair with a woman named Amber Fry. Amber Fry becomes aware of who Scott is, who Laci is, and she calls the police and she says, "Hey, I'm dating this guy." Now, here's one thing I think needs to be said about Amber Fry. She's a good person. From everything I've read and everything I've watched and everything I've listened to, she's a decent person. She's a good person. I don't believe she knew Scott Peterson was married. The one thing I will say about her that I think the media, we're going to talk about the media a lot in this case because they convicted Scott Peterson, not the evidence from the trial. I'm telling you right now, it was not the evidence from the trial. It was the media. They made it sound like Scott killed Laci and Conner because he didn't want to be a father and he wanted to be with Amber Fry and have this beautiful life with Amber Fry. They had only known each other 34 days. 34 days.
Not to mention, Amber also had a child of her own.
Right. If he doesn't want to have a kid, why would he kill his wife and pick somebody that has a kid? It makes no sense. And how in love could you be with somebody after 34 days? And in love enough, you're going to murder your wife for her? Okay, sorry. But that doesn't get mentioned much when you talk about Scott Peterson, you talk about Amber Fry. Nobody ever mentions the fact that they'd only known each other for 34 days. They'd only seen each other 4 times.
Right, yeah. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyways, but during this whole time, Amber Fry is talking, she's communicating with Scott, and she's trying to help the police because they give her like a recorder to record, and she starts recording their conversations. And he's telling some pretty big whoppers for quite a while, like that vigil on the 31st that we just talked about. He's saying he's in Europe and that he's spending New Year's Eve in France by the Eiffel Tower, and he's watching the fireworks go off and all this on and on and on. And she's playing along just to try and help the police and whatnot. But, I mean, it doesn't look good. It's very incriminating, or at least it doesn't make you like Scott Peterson much. And for sure, Scott Peterson definitely is his own worst enemy a lot of the time.
Yeah, I was going to mention, like, your pregnant wife is missing. You're at her vigil, and you are talking to your love affair. Like, it just looks so bad. Even if he did have nothing to do with it. What are you doing? Like, if you had nothing to do with your wife's disappearance, how come you're... I don't know. That just blows my mind.
And here's the thing, too. He tells her that his wife died. He was... He's married. He was married. But my wife died, and this is going to be the first Christmas without her. But here's the thing with that as well. I know he's a jerk. Yeah. He's a scummy guy. I get it. But something the media didn't tell you. They didn't report on this, but they know it to be true. Scott Peterson, that was his thing. He had cheated on Laci many times, and he always told the girls that he was cheating on Laci with that his wife died. That was like his go-to line because it curries favor. It makes the woman feel bad for him. It's a manipulative way of getting a woman to have sympathy for you. Oh, he's a widower. She died. So him saying Laci died, that wasn't necessarily because Nancy Grace, she's what's he clairvoyant, with her stupid Southern accent. And no, he's not clairvoyant, Nancy. This is what he did. He did it all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, not to mention, too, I'm pretty sure his parents sat down and did an interview and was like, what do you have to say about, your son cheating on his pregnant wife? And the dad and the mom both respond with, like, a nonchalant, like, well, it's not uncommon. Like, the mom's all like, she's like, but his wife is 8 months pregnant. And the mom goes, well, that's when they would do it the most. And the dad is over there like, yeah. Like, okay, so these are his parents,
Yeah, Scott is not a good person. If you tell me Scott Peterson is a bad person, I'm going to say you're right. If you tell me Scott Peterson is a murderer, I'm going to say you might be right. That's all I know. Okay, right. So let's keep going here. All right. So eventually it gets out. The Amber Fry thing gets found out, or she comes to the police station. They set up a press conference, and she comes out and she reads her little press conference thing and says, "I've been having an affair with Scott Peterson. I didn't know he was married. I'm very sorry, but I thought people should know that, we had a relationship."
I was going to say, I think it's also worth mentioning this whole time, Laci's parents have been very supportive of Scott. Oh no, he couldn't do anything like that. And then as soon as this comes out, they're no longer, they're like, oh, screw Scott.
Well, and probably rightfully so. I mean,
oh yeah. Now they're like, well, maybe he could have done something like this to Laci if we didn't think he'd cheat. Then that turned him into a murderer in their eyes.
Well, in a lot of people's eyes.
Well, that too, yeah.
The media just explodes and goes totally anti Scott Peterson. He can't come and go from his house without people screaming at him, asking him what he did with Laci's body. Where Conner and Laci, you're a murderer. Blah. So basically, his life is just explodes. And rightfully so, because you lied to the police, you lied to everybody, trying to say that your marriage was great, and maybe it was in your brain, but nobody in their right mind is going to think that your marriage is good if you're cheating on your wife. And there's a famous picture of Laci, and the media jumps all over this. There's like a picture of Laci, and she's sitting in a chair, and she's got her pregnant stomach. It's on December 18th or something. It's taken very, very recently to when she goes disappearing. And then the media finds this other picture, and it's with Amber Fry and Scott Peterson, and they're wearing like Christmas hats, and she's kind of snoodled up on his lap. And those pictures were taken on the same day. And the media reports that and puts that out there. And so Scott just gets hammered. He does an interview, and the interviewer's like, he sounds like a jerk. And he does kind of sound like a jerk if you listen to the interview. So like I said before, Scott's kind of his own worst enemy. Things aren't going well for him. And so, also during this time when he's doing these interviews and lying to the police, and Amber Fry comes out very quickly after Laci goes missing, he trades her car in because he can't afford it. And the media hammered him for that as well. I don't know on that one. If you can't afford something, what are you supposed to do? I think one of the things was he also traded his car in for a new car, right?
Yeah, well, the police had taken Scott's cars. And then
That's
they
right.
gave him the Range Rover, which was Laci's car, back. But it had some problems. And also he needed a work car. So he traded her car in for some kind of truck, which then the police ended up taking that later on down the road as well. So he was kind of in a bind because he was still trying to work while, he still had bills to pay and everything.
So he does some weird things with his vehicles. Of course, the media hammers him over the head for that. So it's just insane. We also forgot to mention the Kristen Smart incident, where there was a woman who went to the same college that Scott Peterson went to, who went missing and was later found murdered. And they in the media, they kind of tried to connect Scott with Kristen Smart. Now, it did come out later on that Scott Peterson, they never found any reason to believe that he had anything to do with that murder, but they still used it. They still put it out there. They still because all of this is going to come back when they go to try and pick a jury for this case, because I've never seen a case where a jury was selected the way it was.
Yeah.
It's so insane. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay. So let's quickly review what the police know. The evidence that they've found so far basically against Scott Peterson, or just looking into the case. They have searched the house. They don't find any signs of foul play or anything wrong there. They go to the storage facility that Scott owns, rents, and they take a look in there. They don't find any blood, that kind of thing. They find some evidence that maybe Scott is making homemade anchors for his boat. They ask him how many anchors he made, because he says, yeah, I made an anchor for my boat. And they say, well, how many did you make? And he says one. They think maybe there's proof that he made more than one, but they're not sure. They're not totally sure. They've been searching the bay, the marina, and the where he went fishing. They've searched that several times. They also have the Amber Fry thing, where they know he's lied about that, and he's been a giant jackass. The one thing I think we can mention here at this point as well is, during this time, when it comes out that Scott was fishing in the bay that day, they let that information out to the media and to everybody on planet Earth. And so let's just say, for speculation, I kidnapped Laci Peterson and I had her tied up in the back of my truck or van or something. And it's been a few days, it's been a few weeks, and I've now decided I've used her for whatever I was using her for. Now I'm going to kill her. Well, where am I going to put her once I've killed her? Well, duh, I'm going to put her in the bay, because that's where you told me Scott was. Of course. I'm not an idiot. So letting that information out, I think, was not a good idea. Also, with this Brocchini guy, he's well, a funny thing when you look at it in hindsight a little bit. So he's questioning Peterson, and he says, so you went to the bay? And Scott says, yeah, I went to the bay. And he says, did you get a receipt for the bay, for the ticket? And he says, yeah, I kept my ticket, because I guess when you go into the thing, you have to punch in a credit card or slide in a few dollars or whatever it is, and you get a little ticket that comes out of the machine, like you do when you're parking to go to court or something, and so, or a parking garage. And so you get a little ticket and it pops out. He still had that ticket that said exactly what time he was. Well, so Brocchini thinks this is suspicious, that he still has this ticket, that he saved it. And so Brocchini's questioning him here and there a little bit more. So he says, eventually he says, so did you go anywhere else that day? Did you stop anywhere else? And Scott says, yeah, I stopped to get gas and an icy or whatever at a gas station. And Brocchini says, well, do you have that receipt? And Scott's like, no, I don't have that one. I didn't keep that one. And guess what? Brocchini finds that suspicious. Well, Jesus Christ, he keeps the receipt and you find it suspicious. He doesn't keep the receipt and you find it suspicious. That's suspicious. I mean, come on. This guy's just he was totally in the tank against Peterson from jump. But so that's basically the evidence that they have, because all the interviews with like friends and family and this and that, they all said that they got along great. Like nobody was like, well, I think he abuses her, I think he hits her, there wasn't any of that. So they didn't have a lot of that kind of evidence. And physical evidence, they found a hair in some like pliers or something in the warehouse. I'm not sure if they ever even determined if that was Laci's hair or not. I don't think it was. One thing is it was widely reported that this boat, that Laci didn't know anything about this boat. It was a secret. And Scott was like, well, no, it wasn't a secret. We were keeping it a secret from the stepdad, Laci's stepdad, because he was a big fisherman and he wanted to surprise him with this boat and to take him out fishing. But then it was said by people and reporters that Laci didn't know about this boat. Well, it come to find out that that's not true. Laci did know about the boat because the woman that worked at the warehouse across the street, she said she saw Laci sitting in the boat. Laci got out of the boat, came into her office, and asked if she could use the bathroom while Scott was there dilly-dallying with the boat, doing whatever he was doing with the boat. And she went to the bathroom in the office. So according to that witness, she did know that Scott had a boat. As far as the concrete anchors go, that everybody's so infamous that Scott tied these anchors to Laci's body when he put it into the bay. The police asked Scott what he did with the rest of the concrete. If you only made one anchor, what did you do with the rest of the concrete? Because there was no concrete there. And he said, I dumped it in a hole in my driveway that was missing part of the pavement or whatever. I just dumped it in there, hoping it would kind of fill in or whatever. And they're like, okay. Well, Nancy Grace just hammered him on this. He dumped it in his driveway like a miracle from heaven. It's just going to rain and turn it into concrete. Just gave him all kinds of guff. Well, eventually her and another guy, and I forget the guy's name, they went to the house. They went to the Scott Peterson's house, and the guy walked over, and he looks, and there it is. It's like little concrete pieces that it looks like somebody just dumped concrete there. And he's like, Nancy, look. And Nancy Grace just goes, and never mentions it again. Never says a word about it again. It's just insane. But so that's basically the evidence that they have. So on April 13th of 2003, a fetus is found floating in the San Francisco Bay. They get it out. The next day, they find a torso. They're pretty sure it's a woman because it has a maternity bra on it. There's no arms, no legs, no head. Some other interesting things about the body are the organs are missing, and it's got sea life living in it. So there's a couple strange things, but they take those back to be autopsied, see if they can get those identified. While this is happening, Scott has since moved to San Diego. His hair is blonde. He's been living with his parents. So the cops, when they find the bodies, they're like, well, I think it's time to arrest this guy. They're following Scott around. He's getting ready to go golfing with his dad and his brother at a country club. And he's in this car, and he thinks it's the media. So he starts just driving. He just driving, and they're not leaving from behind. He's like, well, geez, what's going on here? But he, like I said, he thinks it's the media following him. He thinks they're just gonna give up. Well, they don't. They just continue to follow him, and they go way, way, way. He drives for quite a while, but eventually he comes back and he stops and pulls into that country club parking lot and parks, and they go to arrest him. And he's like, "Oh, I thought you guys were the media. I didn't realize you were the police." Well, the media explodes like you wouldn't believe, because Scott's been hiding, basically. He hasn't really been seen. So they show him with the blonde hair.
They found a couple of things in his car. They were camping and survivor gear, just about $15,000 in cash, multiple changes of clothes, 4 cell phones, a knife, his brother's driver's license, 20 Viagra pills, and 200 sleeping pills. They also may have found a MapQuest printout of where Amber Fry lived, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay. So he has some stuff that's weird, some stuff that makes it look like maybe you would be going on the run, right? Or hiding in the woods or something. I don't know. But he explains a lot of it. He explains that he was living out of his car, basically, is why he has clothes and some of the camping gear and stuff, because he doesn't really have anywhere to put it. His hair, why it's dyed? It's dyed because he's hiding. He's trying to live his life and he can't. So he dyes his hair blonde, and he puts on some sunglasses, and he can go into the store and buy something without everybody yelling at him, whispering about him, pointing at him, and that kind of thing. He didn't dye it because he was on the run. They know this for a fact because there is a picture of him talking to the lead detective, and he has blonde hair. They knew he had dyed his hair. Why is he so close to Mexico? He's living in San Diego. That's where his parents live. That's why he's close to Mexico, because that's where they live. The $10,000 cash, you said, I kind of forgot why, but you said you remember why.
Yeah, I guess the reason why he had that amount of cash on him, one being it was a holiday the day before, so he wasn't able to make it to the bank. But the reason being there was even money pulled out to begin with was because he wanted to switch cars. Now, I don't know the exact reason. Maybe it was to keep the media off of him because he felt like he was being followed everywhere. But his mom was on a joint bank account with him, and maybe he had added Laci on when they had gotten married, and she was still able to access that bank. But she also had her own bank account at that bank. And the way this story goes is they were going to give his truck to his brother. So the mother went to this bank to pull money out of her account to give Scott this $10,000 to pay for maybe the interest costs or something. I don't know. And then when she pulled it out, though, it actually got pulled out of this joint account that Scott actually had. So she gave him the cash, and then when she realized that she had pulled out from the wrong account, she went back and gave Scott the amount from her account, which he ended up with like almost $20,000 in cash. But then he went out and bought a car from a guy named Michael Griffin, which was the car he was found driving in. And in that car cost probably about, I don't know, he ended up having just about $15,000 in cash. So it probably cost him like $4,000 and some change. But the guy who owned that car ended up being a witness stating, I had a dagger in that car, which is why they found a knife in the car to begin with. But the dagger wasn't his to begin with. It was the previous owner's dagger. So, yeah.
And also, like we said, he had his brother's ID.
Right.
He had his brother's ID a lot of the time when he was getting ready to go play golf, because his brother
was a resident.
He was a resident, and he got a discount on the greens fees at the golf course for being a resident, and that's why he had often used that. So
I was gonna say the other thing too is that I'm guessing the sleeping pills were because he's been like, I mean, everybody wants to dig into everything that was in his car, but there's an explanation for everything. And to be honest, if I had to say anything about Scott Peterson and his dealings in the past, the Viagra pills could probably be explained by, I think Scott Peterson was a sex addict. He had a problem.
He might have been.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's me personally just looking into him and his personal life. I just feel like that's why he had Viagra, because he had a problem.
So Scott, he's been arrested, and he gets a public defender, and the public defender says that I can't do this. That this is way too big for me. So Scott's parents have a decent amount of money, I guess. I don't know if they're rich, but they do okay. And so they call up Mark Garagos, and they say, how much money do we need for you to defend Scott Peterson? And he says $1 million. And they say, okay. So now Mark Garagos is Scott Peterson's lawyer. And I, for one, there's probably two lawyers. He'd be in my top two of if I was in trouble and needed a lawyer. It'd be Mark Garagos and Jose Baez. A little side note: Jose Baez is defending a doctor here in Columbus. That should be an interesting trial. The Stephen Husel case. But anyways, so Mark Garagos, in my opinion, he makes a couple of mistakes in this case, but he's still the best that money can buy. And we're going to talk about the couple of mistakes he makes and why, and how they had a very real impact on this trial. I think we'll stop there, and we'll get into the trial on our part 2 of this case, because if you think even some of the things that we've talked about are kind of crazy and kind of insane, you have not seen anything yet. This trial is so insane. I can't emphasize it enough how literally insane this trial was. I was not aware of it at the time. I mean, I was an adult and I knew who Scott, but I had no idea what happened in this trial. It's crazy. So you definitely want to join us for part 2. We want to thank you for listening today. We'll have part 2 out as soon as we possibly can. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. That really helps us. And we'll see you next time on True Crime Groove. Be blessed.